The rain hammered the old rooftop like 1,000 drums when Elena Moreau pressed record. "Peace be upon you," she whispered into the microphone then. In a steadier voice continued, "May you be safe, may you be strong, and may no one ever make you a beggar of hope." My life had been blissfully ordinary. She began warm, Sunday lunches in our sprawling ancestral villa on the outskirts of Lyon, laughter echoing down frescoed corridors, a joint household of parents, siblings, uncles, and cousins who seemed woven together by affection. I was the cheerful one, brilliant at my studies, quick with chores, forever laughing. Doctors shrugged. Every scan pristine, every test polite, yet doors unlatched themselves at night. Breath and not my own rasped behind me. I felt watched, hunted by something I could not name. Then, as often happens with dreams, the glassy surface cracked. My hands rose as though tugged by marionette strings and scored deep welts across my cheeks. I dreamt myself awake in cemetery's mud sucking at my feet, graves twitching open. Each marble slab bore the names of my parents, my siblings. The bolt slid shut, though I'd never touched it. Bruises flowering. She looked once into my eyes and declared, "The spell is woven to your blood." Words fell out of Isabella in gasping confession. A rogue sorceress in Marseille. A charm meant only to sever my engagement. Desire curdled into spite, but the host added another. Years ago, my grandfather rented an estate on the mist-choked moors near Whitby. Their cures bleed you dry. Their piety is painted rust. When faith uses fear as a hook, it is no faith at all, only a path that ends in locked doors, blood on the ceiling, and names chiseled into stone before their time. We discovered too late that the house was a battlefield between benevolent spirits and vile ones. But because sometimes it's standing inches behind you, waiting for the moment you forget that light still exists. A false, holy manna, devil-tongued preacher was invited to cleanse it. Instead, he anchored darkness there, left it snarling in the rafters. Chairs levitated, dishes hurled themselves. Gray children with shaved heads feasted at an invisible banquet each midnight. They killed my grandfather, slowly cancer of no earthly origin. They tossed my aunt across her bed like a rag doll. One night, my grandmother watched every chair in the dining room float to the ceiling, hover a heartbeat, then crash down in unison. One last warning, into something worse. But curses mutate, she sobbed. They always take more than promise. It must be unwound, thread by thread, and your faith must hold every strand. She pressed wax-sealed talismans into my palms, taught me a prayer to murmur until my lips numbed, forbade me to wear any color but white. The first 3 days I shook with such ferocity I thought my bones might shatter. On the fourth, in my dream, a hallway of coffins snapped open, and a lance of blinding light split the gloom, showing a path out. By dawn, I tasted peace for the first time in months, dreams rotting into prophecy when my aunt arrived breathless at our gate. She brought news of a mystic outside Paris, a woman named Sister Marguerite, who used only scripture and spring water. Desperation is a ruthless tutor. At dawn we drove, lights failed, moonlight pooled like spoiled milk under the door. Isabella was seated in our parlor beside her mother, tittering nervously. Dark deeds already gnawed at Isabella's life, her own betrothal shattered, her night stalked by the same nightmares she'd gifted me. Aunt, months later, I still sleep with a silver crucifix under my pillow. No more shadows slipped free of my feet. No more tomb soil clings to my bedsheet. But I learned what envy costs. How easily trust turns to arsenic. Speak softly. Lock your doors. Guard your joy, cause someone might be listening who wishes you nothing but closed graves and unfinished eulogies. She said too brightly, "Your daughter is remarkably resilient. What trials?" Isabella. Outside, barefoot steps circled, slow, deliberate. In the mirror's dim oval, I swore I saw a second face hovering behind mine eyes charcoal, grin split ear to ear. I could not scream. The air stood solid in my lungs. When the door finally swung open by itself, my mother swore she'd heard nothing at all. And, at the center, mine Elena Moreau. Date of death left, blank. A woman in tattered mourning black drifted between the headstones, the stolen amulet blazing in her fist. "You cannot outrun us," she hissed, voice splintering like ice. Words in a language I'd never studied spilled from my mouth. Bite marks blooming across my arms, clumps of my own hair on the pillow. Thin cuts opened at my scalp, as though invisible claws were parting the skin. The bathroom mirror clouded with the stink of sulfur. Inside my old feather pillow we discovered a fistful of gray ash that hissed like snakes when flame touched it. Every remedy Father Gabriel prescribed: salted water, relentless prayer, white clothing for 7 nights seemed only to enrage whatever hunted me. Mirrors warped my face into something cadaverous. Shadows split from my body and walked ahead of me. At the witching hour, a knock would begin soft as a child. Then ravenous yet when I flung the door wide, only muddy footprints stretched across the floorboards toward my bed. Scripture recited by my mother blistered my skin. The room reeked of grave earth and rust. A slow patter dripped from the ceiling. I glanced up to see viscous clotted drops splashing onto my quilt, sizzling holes through the fabric. Heavy footsteps thudded overhead, 4 too large for any living man. I chanted verses I could scarcely breathe. The sound died in my throat as the blood hardened into black scabs across the plaster. Everyone liked me except, I would later learn, my cousin Isabella. A year earlier my engagement had been announced. Happiness felt inevitable. It started with fevers that bloomed every twilight, with knives of pain sliding under my ribs the moment I closed my eyes. Someone has sealed this girl for death. From beneath my pillow, he drew a black sachet, tied with crimson thread. Jealousy, Father Gabriel warned, makes kin into executioners. Inside lay a scrap of parchment. My name, my mother's, and the phrase, Finis Vita. Another identical charm was fished from the bathroom drain. One night, brushing my hair before bed, I stared into the mirror and saw eyes that were no longer mine, steel gray irises ID never possessed. An old family friend, Father Gabriel, once a missionary, rumored to know the darker currents of faith, stepped over our threshold, stopped cold, and murmured. We all knew who had access to my room. What followed hardly feels human to recount. I woke with soil under my nails. The pinnacle was the night of blood rain. Soon even my body rebelled. On the 7th night, I was locked in a lavatory. I was dying by inches, hair thinning. Sister Marguerite never asked my story. When we returned, the room dropped to arctic silence. Sister Marguerite later warned us not to seek revenge. Now, my tale ended. My name is Sebastian Hart, he said, voice trembling. We fled with what breath remained, abandoning furniture, memories, almost our sanity. So listen, never trust charm sellers and counterfeit prophets. So ends the record. If you feel a chill at your window, whisper a prayer knot, because the darkness is strongest.